Hey boys and girls, Doug Childs here. It's Warriors, Rich!
Ed Wildmen. What's happening, Doug?
That was quite the delay, big dog.
Well, I was kind of pausing for effect. What'd you think about that? Working on my intro, man.
I like it tight. Brother.
Do it again. We'll try it again.
No.
No, try one more time. Try one more time. Let's go. Come on. Let's go.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Hey, boys and girls. Doug Childs.
Wow, man.
That's a little fast.
Is that too fast?
All right.
Well, you know why? Because I'm a famous Polish comedian. Ask me what the secret of my success is.
What's the secret of your
timing?
Success? Wow.
Nailed it. Warriors and Wildmen. Let's roll. Let's rock with it. I like it.
Hey, Rich. Good to see you, buddy. And I've got a great show for you today, big dog. We've got Jim Houck returning. And Jim, if you remember him, was the writer and director and the security advisor that has done some pretty epic stuff all across the country, all around the world. And Jim's been trying to get me together with our next guest, Jaeson Jones. And Jaeson, he's a customs and border security expert. That's his forte. Some of you guys are going to recognize him from Fox Nation and Fox News. Jaeson, Jim, welcome to Warriors and Wildmen.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Yeah. So Jim told me about the soiree, Jaeson, that you guys had up in Central Texas, last Friday, and he said you pretty much, peeled a bunch of eyelids back, a lot of shock and awe in regards to, what's going down at our open borders. I got to tell you, as a Christian who's kind of pastoring, we got a Bible study. After the COVID-19 edicts pretty much just wrecked all these churches, we decided, hey, if they're not going to keep their doors open, then we'll have a cigar and sermon event down here in the Texas Hill Country. And so prior, Jaeson and Jim, to what we're seeing now is this cluster, that's going down in South Texas all the way to San Diego. I had pastors, Jaeson, Jim, literally heard it come out of their mouth. It doesn't matter who's president. Politics is unessential. All we need to, as little Christians, is just focus on loving Jesus and loving people. Now, so they ostensibly told people that, hey, if Trump doesn't win, it ain't no big whoop. I'm seeing something different, in a multifaceted way. I'm seeing a lot of bad stuff happening real quick. Again, both y'all's forte is national security. Jaeson, in particular, obviously, yours is on the border. Could you tell Pastor Numbnuts what has occurred since Biden has got behind that august desk at 1600 Penn Ave where Bill boinked Monica?
Yeah, sure. And it's good to be with you. Thanks for having me. I will tell you that perception drives migration, period. That's the way it really works. And if you're on the ground and you're talking to these people, and as they're crossing, you ask them, why are they coming right now? They will tell you very clearly. And I warned this on national television in late November, early December, that because of the national campaign and the way it was being portrayed, that if you come, you will make it into the United States. That information coming out was heard around the world. And you are seeing that now in the numbers of people that are crossing on our southwest border. That's not a perception. We knew it was coming. And so now it's here, and we are seeing it in the data. Last month, 100,441 people apprehended at the southwest border in a 30-day period. Now look at where we are now going into March. Now I've looked at preliminary numbers. Gentlemen, we're going to be between 165,000 to 175,000 apprehensions in 30 days. Now, in my career of 24 years, we've never been here. And that is a failure of two things. One is the perception that was portrayed to the world. And second, the fact that we changed U.S. policy to get away from migration protection protocols, along with what we call the over-the-horizon approach, working with host nations to make several barriers before they hit our country. Those are both things that were implemented under President Trump. And now we're seeing the effects of it clearly.
Hey, Rich, won't you fill him in on what? So, Rich has a church in Yuma. Tell him what you and Annie saw the other day when you guys were tooling around the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think it's important because what you were just sharing, people hear that. And I think sometimes those numbers are staggering. They can't really imagine it, or they don't live near the border, so they don't think it's important. To me, those numbers are important because we live in Yuma. Yuma's, 15 miles from the border. If you go straight from the city across the river, it's about 6 miles. I mean, it's right there. And so I grew up there, been there my whole life. And just recently they released, 385 people just on our main street, on our main drag, just dropped them off in buses and vans, just dropped them off, illegals. Just boom, here you are. And my wife told me, she said, hey, there's, she didn't describe them as military age males. That's how I describe them. But they're military age males walking around on the streets. These are not families. These aren't people, these are people probably 18 to 26 years old, groups of men walking up and down the street. And my wife said, well, it's shocking. And she said, and it's a little scary because no one knows who they are. She said, they can do whatever they want and they can disappear. She said, anything that we do, we live here. We have an ID. People know who we are. And so they don't have any reason to not break the law and do what they want. And so she would get out of her car and go in the store. And these guys are whistling and yelling at her. And I mean, I'm not talking about normal stuff. Guys do that. My wife's beautiful. And I mean, that happens because there's, idiots everywhere. But a majority of these people are behaving like that. And it's making my wife feel very unsafe. And she has a CCW she carries and stuff. But, that obviously is a help. But that's not the answer to the problem, right? It's like just everybody has to get a gun and walk around like we're in the Wild West again. And so when I got there to Yuma, I was driving down the street and there were literally groups of 15 to 20 men all together just walking down the street. And we have this crazy thing in America. Don't worry, I'm not going to overrun the podcast. I'm going to say this and let you guys do your thing because I want to hear you guys. But people have this perception that if you're Mexican, that the Border Patrol will pull you over and ask you for your ID and try to send you back to Mexico and treat you bad. And I'm from Yuma. It's not like that. That's fake news. Yuma is more than 60% Hispanic. And we grew up with, my kids are half Hispanic. You see an illegal walking down the street in Yuma, and everyone who lives there says, that's an illegal right there. They don't look like Hispanic Americans. They look like people from Mexico. They look like people who came across the desert. They're carrying all their stuff in plastic bags. It's not something where it's this, oh no, anybody who's Hispanic is going to experience racism and get shaken down. That's a lie. It's totally not true. It's fake. It's not real life. They need to drive to Yuma. So those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, so Jason, and Jim, and I'll toss this one to Jim. Jim, when we were told, when Sleepy Creepy Joe got into the White House, we were told that there's nothing, but poor children and weeping mothers that are coming across the border. Why don't you fill people in and Jason, obviously, feel free to jump in too, big dog. I just saw 2 Yemeni terrorists that were on the FBI's watch list that just got scrubbed by the CBP, from their website. I just saw them, and then all of a sudden, poof, they're gone. So I'm thinking if you got like 150,000 people pouring through in 1 month, there might be some scallywags mixed in. So why don't you educate the masses watching Wars and Wildmen right now that who's coming through, what we need to prep for, because I think it's going to get ugly, man.
Well, the easiest answer to who's coming through is everyone you can think of, and lots of folks you probably wouldn't think of. How about your terrorists are waltzing in? We saw what a couple terrorists with just a smidgen of funding could do at September 11th, 2001. And those guys had it a little harder. I mean, they had to come in and stage it up and build it, and look what they pulled off. And thank heavens they didn't do it 2 hours later when that tower was full and the streets were full. And luckily it didn't do this and fall straight over. It came down almost demolition style. But who's getting in? All the cartel rapists they can shove over the border as fast as they can. All the Enforcers, they can push over the border as fast as they can, which isn't to say there aren't thousands of them in the U.S. now. In every single state there are. It's just to say there are going to be tens of thousands more.
Can I interrupt you for a
anyone who
second?
comes-
Would they be pushing like the enforcers and guys like that? Is that to strengthen their business here on the U.S. side? Is that what you're talking about?
They have to bring. You've got to bring in more handlers for the slaves because you've got more slaves coming in. It's an unprecedented slave. I want to take 1 second to address a term. There's a term out there that we hear all the time: trafficking. There's sex traffic or labor trafficking. You hear once in a while, or just trafficking victims. Well, that's a bullshit term, guys. Traffic is what gets between you and your destination. Traffic is too many taillights between you and the place you're trying to drive to. This isn't that. The accurate term for this is slavery. And it's as brutal a slavery as there's ever been in human history. There are more slaves now worldwide than there were during the time when big countries like the U.S. actually had slavery. These are rape slaves and labor slaves, and that usually is a blend. So nobody comes over that border without cartel approval. Nobody comes over that border without cartel having tracking on them. You know, I used to see the Jews in Auschwitz, they had the brand tattooed on. Well, they're not branding them. It's cheaper. They're putting on what looks like a concert wristband. It has all kinds of tracking information. It has their unique identifier number, which is exactly the same thing they did in Auschwitz and Dachau.
Are you serious?
Literally the exact same. Yeah, I'm dead serious. Jason,
they're wearing wristbands, and we know that, but nobody
multicolored wristbands. Yeah, Jason's got bags full of these. They're scattered everywhere along the border from California to far side of Texas. They're doing that because they have a traffic issue as far as control. The slaves that they're bringing in, and all of them are indebted servants to the cartels forever. You never get off that hook. So they'll come in and, any female from the age of infant to 70 has most likely been raped. It's virtually certain. And that's just to help dial you in and help you understand this is how this works. Behave and be obedient. But once they come in, they report to cartel on this side. And they've got their number, and the cartel has all the relatives dialed in down, back from wherever home is. It could be Yemen, it could be Malaysia, it could be Mexico, it could be Timbuktu. Yeah. If you don't do your job while you're here, and that can include being raped as many as 60 times a day. I know that they've recovered people who reported they were raped as many as 60 times. One girl who actually did a TED Talk and this was in Houston, by the way. You don't think this is some over there. All that we're talking about today is here in the U.S., not limited to Texas. She said she would always count how many times she was raped per day until she got to 100. And on the days she would get to 100, she'd stop counting because it was too hard for her to survive once you break that magic threshold she'd set. But if you do the math, that's you're being raped every 16 minutes at 60, and at 100, it dials down. So it was a hysterical rape farm, and that's happening in Texas. Texas is, from what I've read, the number one state in the United States for rape slavery. We have an estimated 80,000 rape slaves in Texas alone. That's bigger than most of our major cities. We have some big cities, but 80,000 people fill 2 big football stadiums.
Right.
It's astonishing. I'll let Jason jump in.
Yeah.
Jason is
Jason, because here
in the United States on this.
Yeah, Jason, here's the thing: is that when it's brought up in the news, Kamala Harris, who's now the border czar, she just starts cackling, like a hyena. Fox News will touch, a little bit on how dank it is down there. Newsmax a little better. Why don't you take us to church, man? Really roll out what we're not hearing. Make it as raw as possible. I don't hear it, and I watch Fox News all the time.
I'm in shock already, guys. I'm already in shock. I'm blown away.
Yeah, let me roll out a little bit of what got us here, and then I'll roll into exactly what Jim was talking about with the wristbands, and then more importantly, how that affects every one of your audience and the rest of this country. So what has really happened here, guys, is Mexican cartels, if you notice, I don't call them drug cartels. That's something they do. It's not what they are anymore. We saw a major shift, and quantum leap is really the way to describe it, in 2006, as they went from what they used to call the company or organized crime into an insurgency. This is when President Calderon began using the military to go after the leadership. But what happened is this is where they began fighting back. And I mean truly insurgency operations, building in tradecraft from foreign designated terrorist organizations like the FARC and working with special forces groups like GAFE and many, many others from around the world. Then in 2009, as the war broke out between the Zs, known as the Los Zetas, and the Gulf, we fell into terrorism. This is where we had the Allende massacres of over 300 men, women, and children who were killed, chopped into pieces, and then guisoed, which is the stew. You may remember the 72 migrants in San Fernando who were brutally executed just because they were trying to make a better life for themselves coming into the U.S. And then following that into the casino attack, which killed over 52 people, all done by the Los Zetas, which were a hyper-violent cartel. And then in 2015, the final transition into what we call a parallel government as Operation Jalisco commenced, when President Nieto sent special forces to go after the leadership of Cartel Jalisco New Generation, the leader of that group known as El Mencho, and their helicopters were shot down. But what happened and what followed that was the fact that Mencho said to Mexico City himself, and that is that if you come back and you try that again, I'll come to Mexico City. And it shows to the strength and breadth by which we're talking about today, and that the U.S. government has refused, and I will tell you refused. I saw these tripwires. I worked all the events I'm talking to you about and many, many more, trying to get our government to do what needed to be done for success. And to this day, we have not done that. So that, and one thing we definitely want to cover here today is solutions, because I want to assure you, and I want to assure your audience, there are solutions to these problems, gentlemen. And I get very frustrated because you're absolutely right. Usually there's not enough time to talk about these solutions, but they are there. Now, the wristbands are also a part of an evolution that occurred. That's exactly what it is. We saw it in 2014 when the unaccompanied alien children were surging into the U.S. We would see phone numbers written on their hands or on their clothing or on the bottoms of their shoes. In 2019, we began seeing account numbers, or actually the same account number along with routing numbers in thousands of people's pockets. Again, national news media didn't cover it. And now in 2021, the wristbands are another part of that evolution. And what it is it's an indicator to the level of people surging. While we talk about what's happening to us, in Mexico, the cartels themselves are also feeling that pressure. So when you talk about these wristbands that they're wearing, what those wristbands really indicate is a process. And that process is how they keep track of those people who are coming, who have paid what is known as the piso or the tax, and who have not. And here's what I mean by that. You have to remember, you've got 170,000+ people in a 30-day period. So what they've begun doing is going from stash house to stash house, literally saying, okay, if you're a Mexican citizen, you're going to pay $2,500 just across that border. If you're a Central American, you're paying $3,000. If you're Chinese, it's $5,000. If you're Russian or Middle Eastern, it's $9,000. Never mind all the other plazas you've had to cross. So they don't have the money. And so what happens is they can pay $1,000 up front. Well, now they're indebted to these groups, $1,000 in. But how does the cartel know who paid, who hasn't, and how much is left? Well, this is that process. And so on that band is a number. And that number is directly affiliated by their personal identifying information onto a laptop or in their computers, where they have that individual's name, identification number, cell phone number, and point of where they're going into the United States. But it doesn't stop there. They then pick up the phone and they call their family back in the country of origin. It can be anywhere around the world. They get all of their information and they validate who they are. Now you can hold them accountable. And think about this, whether we agree with it or not, if you're in this country legally or illegally, you are now indebted to a criminal organization in a foreign country. Gentlemen, that's human trafficking and what we call debt bondage. It's the final form of trafficking. Many are familiar, I know, in the audience with the sex part of this, but you have to remember when you talk about human trafficking, there are three layers. It's the sex, it's forced labor, and debt bondage. And it's just really a nice way of saying modern day slavery. And that's just the facts of it.
Yeah, and this administration is obviously, evidently hyper pro-slavery. You know, you hear people say, wow, we've got our first Black female president. Okay. Well, she's pro-slavery. She's pro-rape slavery from what I can see. Because to Jason's point, this surge, as they like to call it, which is a tidal wave of innocents who didn't know any better. They didn't hear about this by accident. The cartels are running full-on advertising campaigns around the world saying, come to America now. You know, Joe Biden welcomes you. Mean old Trump's gone.
Right.
illegal immigration is welcome. Americans wear a mask and show ID to go anywhere and do anything, but you guys can come in. And like Jason said, nobody comes in and gets off the hook. It's not like you pay your money and if you get across the desert and you don't starve or you're not found by Border Patrol like that little boy was that made the news all over the place this morning, out just wandering around crying, you're on the hook forever. And if you screw it up, don't think you won't get a video of grandma getting her head sawed off, because you will. We've got footage that would make the average person throw up, and we've got enough of it we could show to you for a year. The barbarism, the level of violence, the actual worship of Satan. These people are openly worshiping the satanic culture and cult, and they're proud of it. We're letting those folks flow in here like you can't believe. On top of that, you go to all these innocent people from around the world who don't know any better. They've been told a lie. They believe it. They show up. And once they get in that net, they are not getting out. That door slams behind them, and they never, ever get out from under this until they're dead. And that's either by natural causes, or they're starved to death, or they're raped to death, which happens often, or they're beaten to death, or they're tortured to death. The state of Texas is becoming a child rape slavery destination globally. You hear all this stuff about, the great state of Texas, and the Lone Star State shines on everyone. Come and take it. That's my favorite. That's one that makes me the maddest of all as a resident of Texas. Come and take it. They're here, and they're taking it. And they're starting with our kids. And it's not just, look at all these poor children they brought in from all these other areas. They're kidnapping the hell out of our kids, too. It's just covered up. Like Jason said, they're just not reporting on it. Why? And where in the hell is our leadership? Somebody asked me.
Yeah, so that's what I was.
Leadership problem.
Yeah, what's so Jason, with all your reporting and stuff, what's Abbott doing? Is he like, we got to shut this mother down, or is he just twiddling his thumbs, ball sack, something like that?
Yeah, I'll be very frank with you. I'm not too impressed with Governor Abbott. What you see happening right now under Operation Lone Star is a direct result of the great work of the men and women at the Texas Department of Public Safety and Director Steve McCraw. And the reason I say that, gentlemen, is this was all started in 2009. The problem with that is that with every major surge, you have different trends and different patterns that really change form in how you operate. And I don't see a lot of that change happening now. I'm the full faith in Director McCraw, but I also understand that we're dealing with something this time that is much different. And what I mean by that is many people watching probably think that we're talking about U.S. Mexico or Central America. That's not what we're seeing right now. The game has truly changed. We have people coming from around the world. And if you look at what's coming through the Darien Gap right now, it's very scary. I mean, we're looking at 1,000 special interest aliens a week. Now, your government breaks people down into three categories. First is Mexican citizens. Yeah, the Darien Gap is a gap just north of Colombia going into Panama. It's about 90-mile gap, and it allows us to have certain programs I can never talk about publicly to really understand those people who come from a country with a terrorism nexus, with which we call special interest aliens. Then you have another group we call OTMs, other than Mexicans. Those are mostly Chinese, Central Americans. And then you have Mexican citizens. That pretty much encompasses all folks who come from around the world. And we prioritize our Homeland Security Enterprise approach based on which class they fit in. And the thing that bothers me the most, and I will say it now, and I've been saying it for months, is that the special interest aliens now hitting the southwest border are from countries with a direct link to terrorism. And our system was never designed for this numbers. You see what I'm getting at? So the two Yemenis that you guys discussed earlier, that's a prime example. Now, the question you got to ask then, with all of those that we do know about, how many do we not know about?
Yeah, and to Jim's point, 9/11, it took 5 guys from Saudi Arabia to do the damage that they did to the World Trade Center and the Pentagon.
Yeah, I mean, what could 50,000 do? Well-financed, well-organized. These people coming in.
That, like you guys said, that they're on the hook. They've got to do what they tell them to do, or Granny gets her head cut off, or their niece or nephew, who's a toddler, gets deep fried in Crisco oil.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I was just down there last week, guys, and I watched in a 2.5-hour period as 282 men, women, and children were smuggled in from 10:30 to around 12:30 or so at night 3 to 4 rafts deep. And when we would talk to these folks, and I would say, hey, I mean, I saw children, just so you know, that I've never seen, and I've been on that border since 1999. I've never seen infants 23 days old like I saw. I never saw back-to-back infants like we're seeing. So the game has truly changed. And one of the things I would tell you is when we talk to these folks, and I said, why are you crossing here? Because I was right there in Roma, just across from Miguel Alemán, which is the most violent area along the southwest border because the cartels are at war, Cartel de Golfo and Cartel del Noreste. And I said, tell me, why are you crossing with these babies through this area? And they said, because this is where they told us to cross. And it goes to show that the level of care, custody, and control that they have over these people as they migrate through Mexico, it's all by design. I mean, it's just the way it really works.
Jason, tell the guys about ONDCP and what that represents. And I'm gonna preface what Jason says with this. This is all being driven by China. It's 100% being driven by them. The Mexican cartels, which are big transnational criminal organizations, are benefiting enormously, but China is the one who's really benefiting. If China flew over, let's say Chicago, and dropped a bomb and killed, 88,000 people, I assume we would declare war. I can't be certain under this fake administration. But under Trump, we damn sure would have. Now that I've said that, Jason, I'll let you tell them what ONDCP is and what that number represents.
Yeah, it represents a lot of frustration for me, gentlemen. I'll tell you straight out. The Office of National Drug Control Policy is what he's talking about. This is where the position is that its job is to set U.S. policy against the drug epidemic that we're facing in this country. And right now, ONDCP just announced that from August of 2020 to August of 2019, 88,000 Americans died from drug overdoses. Now, I want to put that in perspective. We have never as a nation been here, not even close. If you go back to the crack epidemic in this country, which I know all of you can remember, according to the CDC, we only averaged around 10 to 12,000 people overdosing a year. So when you think of where we are in the drug problem today, it is not an enforcement issue. We have to look at the drug issue completely different. Fentanyl and methamphetamine are not a drug. They're a poison. And the data shows that to us. And what is happening with ONDCP, and where I get very frustrated, is that beginning under President Obama, continued under President Trump, and now continued again, 3 administrations, ONDCP has gone down this model of prevention and treatment. And if you look at the data, it has skyrocketed straight up in overdose deaths. Just go to the CDC website. You'll see their charts yourself. It's stunning. And where I'm going with this is that the policy of treating people and prevention sounds good. I mean, hell, say it slow and like you mean it. It sounds right? But the data shows it's wrong. You can't treat a body that's dead. And when you're taking a pill that you think may be Adderall, and we're seeing kids 8 years old who are not drug addicts, we're seeing families being destroyed across this country, yet it's not getting out to the degree. And the solution is very clear. China has used the cartels as a proxy. And so what they're doing is shipping chemical precursors, specifically within fentanyl, 4A, NPP, and NPP in mass numbers, along with pseudoephedrine and others to make methamphetamine. And these mega labs, when I talk about fentanyl, you need to know that 4 salt grains will kill the host in 1 pill, anything over that according to the Drug Enforcement Administration. But also that this drug, they're producing millions of pills a day according to the DEA. Millions. So we're in a tactical game. We're not in a talk game. We've got to be hitting these labs and striking them now. We're not doing anything. The relationships right now between the United States government and the AMLO administration in Mexico is worse than I've ever seen it. And I've done a lot of things I can't talk here in cross-border operations and collaborating with intelligence to help drive operations in Mexico under previous administrations. But I am very, very frustrated because when you look at the data, it shows very clearly that the policies that ONDCP is going down and the policies of the United States government are not working, period. They're not working.
And here's some challenger questions, guys. The average citizen will sit out there and hear a podcast like this, and it will make them incredibly frustrated. At times, they might feel a little sick to their stomach when we start talking about the stuff these cartels do to humans, like beat them to death with sledgehammers or tomahawk them to death, or diesel, which, if it doesn't know what diesel is, you take a 50-gallon drum, you put your dead people in it, or your chunks of dead people, whatever, chainsawed up arms and legs, and you put a bunch of diesel fuel in it, and you light it. And by the time that diesel fuel burns off, there's no evidence. It's all gone. Tens of thousands of those have occurred and will occur and continue to occur, and they occur here too now. We had an armed cartel caravan punch over 80 miles into Texas. Unfettered. This is China. This is an asymmetric war that's been declared on the United States. We are at war with China. This is how they're doing it, and they're killing thousands and thousands. And like Jason just pointed out, it's easy to say, well, this person overdosed, it's on them, they're morons. Yeah, to a certain extent, but not when it's somebody taking something that they thought was an actual medication. Because we're seeing that. Where are most of the medications in this country made? At our enemy's lab. Why do you think they're easing this stuff into it and accidentally poisoning thousands of innocent people? Because they can, because we're not stopping it. Could we stop it? Just like that. Why aren't we? Why doesn't every person listening to this pick up the phone and call Greg Abbott's office and say, hey, Greg, what's this rape slavery podcast I just heard? What? Like Jason said, could we hit those labs with our air power? Are you kidding? In 5 minutes? Why don't we? Why, when those ships come across the sea full of dope, aren't we hitting them? Why is this happening? Why is our border wide open under President Obama? Jason, you shut that border down. You raised, what, $1.2 billion when you were captain of the Department of Public Safety? And you locked that son of a buck down. Why isn't that happening right now? Well, you got to wonder, who's working with these people? Who's compromised by the Chinese Communist Party? Why is this happening? Why are they flooding? Yeah. Why are we flooding the United States of America with very often very poor, no rich people are walking over that border under cartel control, often poorly educated. That's not a slam, that's just a fact. Folks who don't speak the language 99% of the time, who are coming in here, they're broke, they're desperate. Where the hell are they going to eat the first day? Where are those men of fighting age going to go when they get desperate and hungry and they're looking for food, they're looking for water, they're looking for a bathroom, and they're tired and they're mad? And they're going to organize naturally because they're all in the same boat, they all speak the same language, and half of them coming in here with training. Now, some of them are actually being picked up by their cartel bosses on this end. They're good to go. They've got a system that we've allowed them to build. This is horse shit. It's time for the United States of America to bring the righteous hammer down on this. We're being invaded. We're being attacked through just what Jason said, a proxy military. People think cartel, they've got the Netflix version in their head. It's not that. Those guys get special operations level training from other enemy nations that have pretty decent TTPs, techniques, tactics, and procedures. They know what the hell they're doing. Mexico, they're done. We project force around the world constantly. Why aren't we helping our neighbors? When I'm in Mexico and I ask the hard question, if we came in here with our ground pounders, we blocked the borders and the ocean, and nobody could get out, would you guys point out the cartel to us, or would you see us as invaders and fight us? You know what the number one answer I get? When are you coming? They're stuck. They're not going to get out from under this any more than the good Chinese citizens are going to get out from under the evil empire of the Chinese Communist Party. The average American needs to stop what they're doing and get involved and get interested, because when they have 400 people like your wife saw dropped off on the street corner, they're going to be dealing with it the hard way. Defund the police, you think that's not all working in concert? We gut our law enforcement who are working their asses off down in that border. You know, Jason's buried friends. He's taken unbelievable personal risk. He's using his own money to do this because he's a great American, trying to get enough other Americans to know what's going on and roger the hell up and put the amount of downward force on their politicians required to either get them to do their job or kick them out of office and put someone in who damn well will. This is a disgrace. Tens of thousands of kids are getting raped throughout this podcast. What are we doing about it? Come and take it? Great state of Texas? Bullshit. Come and take it? If we can't make a legislative priority out of babies getting raped, what are we as citizens? What's a higher priority, Greg? I'm speaking to Greg Abbott. What's the higher priority? You've got housing? What? Price of fuel? What's the higher priority?
Re-election.
Getting another airport built? Re-election? What's a higher priority than a bunch of barbarians strapping a 16-year-old girl to a bed with chains naked, raping her until she prolapses and bleeds out? What's a higher priority than that we've got? What's taking precedent over this? What's holding our law enforcement back? Because don't think they aren't capable of hunting these guys down.
So I'm guessing that, Jason, you and Jim have confronted Abbott in his office about this. So what's their response?
I'm not confronting Abbott on this. I'll tell you what I'm trying to do, guys. I'm trying to illuminate this thing I'm trying to illuminate this thing to the nation. What we are still doing extremely bad is looking at the cartels as a drug trafficking organization and not what they've become, which is really a global violent network that is a terrorist organization. And there are key solutions that are in place that are available that we need to put in place. And what I mean by that is this: if we're going to win against this problem, first and foremost, we got to designate the cartels as foreign terrorist organization. That provides two things: authorities and power, right? And priorities as well. Second, we must fix the broken Uniform Crime Report and National Incident-Based Reporting System. This is what the FBI uses that is absolutely a disgrace to this nation. The UCR was created in 1929, implemented in 1934. And everything we've talked about today is not captured. Public corruption, weapons trafficking, drug trafficking, human trafficking. We didn't even have human trafficking on the books until 2001. So we're still using a crime reporting system that goes back so old that doesn't capture transnational crime. So you hear it all the time. And look, I speak all over the nation on these issues. And when I go up north, people are not lying when they say, Jason, we hear you, but we don't see it. We feel it, but we don't see it in the data. They are not lying, gentlemen, because the data system our government is using is that outdated. Mm-hmm. Can you believe we have been in a drug war for 50 plus years now? And our system cannot tell the American people how much dope is seized in this country amongst 18,000 law enforcement agencies. It's a disgrace.
Doesn't make any sense.
But also very fixable. Yeah. So when I lay these things out, and people, if you're going to change $1 billion program, you better be able to justify it on data. And when the data doesn't exist, you understand why the FBI, DEA, and others don't transition into fighting the cartels, because they don't see it tangibly in the data. But that doesn't mean it's not happening. You see, in Texas, we created that system that allows us to be able to see it. And it's also why we spent $2.2 billion with a B in Texas from Texas taxpayers for border security from 2014 to 2017. And in this one right now that we're in, Operation Lone Star, we're already 800 million in. And I'll tell you, get ready. It's going to be a lot more, because our legislature can see the data to drive operations. Now, at the national level, once we do that, we'll start winning. And then the final thing I'll say here on this is that where is the leadership? You've got FBI, DEA, HSI, U.S. Marshals, ATF, incredible agencies with great people ready to respond right now. But where's the leadership? They haven't even come out and talked about it publicly. I mean, you want to talk about failed leadership? Do you know how difficult it is to pick up the phone as the director of the FBI, call Troy Miller, who I know personally, and say, Troy, I got 27,000 agents. I got 32 helicopters. Tell me what you need, and I'll get them there. That's all. This is what it takes. And look, I've been on those phone conversations. And for me to see this level of failure absolutely frustrates me to no end when you talk about leadership, because it's truly that easy. It's truly that simple. And we see none of it.
Here's a question I'll throw to the audience, because Jason's laying out the solutions, and he's absolutely right. It's easy to fix this. That's what is so disgraceful. If it was some unbelievable thing that no one knew how to fix, and there's a meteorite coming towards Earth, we're in big trouble. Shit, I don't know. Call Bruce Willis. This is fixable today. It was fixable yesterday. It was fixable the day before that. It's not being fixed for a reason. This fits the agenda of what's going on. Don't think that this is all coincidental, okay? You want to talk about a fentanyl overdose that touched everyone? George Floyd. I've read the coroner's report because I got it. I want to know the ground truth. I don't give a crap what the court of public opinion says. I saw the footage that was edited on TV, and I saw all the footage that was actually captured. George Floyd, according to the coroner, the medical expert, did not die of a guy kneeling on his neck. In fact, it reads, if I can quote it exactly, no evidence of mechanical asphyxiation. Cause of death, overdose by fentanyl. Where'd the fentanyl come from? Mexicans, cartels. Where'd that come from? China. Who sent it? Who do you think? China. Look how that was leveraged. Look what that did to businesses and livelihoods. And all the people got their brains stomped out by Antifa and the Black Lives Mafia. Give me a break. This has got nothing to do with race. It's got nothing to do with taking care of good black folks. Otherwise, how come that Captain David Dorn up there in Chicago wasn't born when he was massacred trying to take care of his friend's shop? This all ties together. Jason's point, the most important point I think in this whole podcast, this is a leadership failure. You want this fixed before it's on your front yard, which it will be. You want this fixed before you have the ability to say this sentence, we can't find her anywhere. Or we can't find him anywhere, referring to one of your own kids. That's the sentence I heard come out of a friend of mine's mouth one time in a complete catastrophic panic. We can't find her anywhere. Can you help? When that
Jason,
happens,
can I ask you a really, really stupid question? I have to ask it because I've been wondering it for a few minutes. I'm going to ask a dumb question. Everybody don't hate me. So would you recommend not going to Mexico for vacation? I know that might not sound that important, but where we live in Arizona, everybody vacations in Mexico. That's a real question.
It's a good question.
Hey, gents,
it is.
I've got a lot of guys that are inviting me to hunt. I'm a big hunter and stuff. It's like, man, they've got some epic desert mule deer. They've got some epic, coos deer or coos deer, however you pronounce it, just right across the border. And I got invited on a desert bighorn sheep hunt on the Baja Peninsula. And it's like, I'm not going. I did 10 years of mission trips, 20, 30 years ago down to Mexico. And it sucked back then. I can't imagine, what's going on now with this full-scale war that's got more dead people than the Iraq-Afghanistan wars combined going down there. And then with what Biden has done and opened the floodgates and activated, like you said, all these nefarious players. I ain't going to I'm not going to Mexico. I don't know if I'd even go to Laredo. And I had some glorious ranches that I hunt down in the valley. And I've got, Jason, and Jim, I've got some buddies that are hunting around the King Ranch, and they're hunting nilgai antelope, and they send me pictures of these illegal aliens just traipsing, through these beautiful ranches, cutting fences. They did a helicopter survey after the whitetail season. They're freaking hiding under the bushes, running, fleas off a dog's back, and these are beautiful, pristine ranches that were really given a reprieve, really given a break during Trump years. And now it's just, boom, back to the cluster, that it was under Obama's reign of terror.
Well, think about it. I was at one of these talks a while back, and someone said, well, you sound like you're anti-immigrant. My wife is an American citizen and a legal immigrant. She grew up in communism. And she's seen the exact same things that she saw as a kid under the USSR food deal. This is not an accident. It has nothing to do with immigration. I'm obviously pro-immigrant, or I wouldn't have married one. This is about snagging people into a slavery network that's not being called what it is. America has slavery back. The Emancipation Proclamation has been thrown out the window. We have more slaves now than we ever had.
So back to Rich's question.
Yeah, here's the question. The question is, what do you think about flying into places like Cancun, cruise ships, Cozumel, that kind of stuff, versus border cities, or driving down to Rosarito, south of San Diego, that kind of stuff? Like, that's a practical question, because the people where we live, that's a real question.
Yeah.
Jason.
I tell them don't do it anymore. And the reason for that is that historically going back, you had hyper-violence in certain regions. The Frontera across from Texas and Tamaulipas. Then, it broke out in Sinaloa. But now what we're seeing, guys, is this thing has spread across everywhere. I mean, when you look at the violence going on between RCQ, El Mayo, and Los Chapitos within the Sinaloa cartel across from Arizona, Agua Prieta is a great example. Guys, that's straight out war. And when you talk to those cartel guys, that's what they call it. They'll tell you that. Now, if you're gonna take a flight directly into Cancun, here's what happens. If you stay in the resorts, you're most likely going to be okay. But when you go into town, you go right into their territory. Now, we were having beheadings in Cancun. We had a couple of bombings on some ferries that have occurred there from cartel on cartel violence. And if you get in the middle of that, well, you're stuck in it. And who's coming to your rescue? That's the problem. And my thing about it too is look, we've got to get Mexico fixed. It's a great, great country, great people. We've got to get it fixed. And if we keep spending our money and the world keeps going there, they're not going to. And when their tourism gets hit, that's a huge income for them. So what I say right now is, look, let's let it get fixed. And when you talk about, we're talking about America right now. Let's talk about the Mexican citizen for a second. From 2007 until 2020. There have been 264,000 murders in Mexico, according to their own data, which I can tell you their data is
Say
incorrect.
that again. Say the years again, the numbers one more time. Say that again.
You bet. From 2007 until the end of 2020, you had 264,000 plus dead Mexican citizens from cartel on cartel violence. Now think about those numbers.
Yeah,
that's according to their, gentlemen, that's their own data. That doesn't, and their data is wrong. Their data is much more conservative than what's really happening. So to me, it's extremely frustrating because it is absolutely fixable, and we know what needs to be done to fix it. And, we've got to get the word about these solutions, because I'll tell you, there are a lot of good people in government from both sides at times that are truly going into these positions, wanting to come up with solutions. But many of them have never worked the border. They have no idea what these cartels are doing and what they're capable of. And they sit in these classified rooms, and many times they listen to analysts who've been at the job for 2 to 3 years, but have never worked on the border, never debriefed a cartel member, have no idea that Sinaloa is in 54 countries. CJ&G is operating in over 48 nations. I mean, we continue to talk about them as if it's a U.S.-Mexico issue. It's much bigger.
For a second. Like you said, though, the databases aren't connected and they're not getting the information anyway. So how could they come to the correct conclusion if they don't have the information? It's impossible.
Yeah, data-wise, you're absolutely right. And especially when we talk about how transnational crime is affecting the American people. But have you noticed, everyone knows it. They feel it in the communities. I mean, and I'm going to tell you this too, UCR data, the Uniform Crime Reporting, as broken as it is just coming out now this week. And some of the new murder numbers are incredible. The percentages, we are literally going backward right now because of the U.S. policies we have in place to the 1990s in murders in this country. And that data is going to be seen. And I was looking at some of the preliminary data here just a little while ago. It's pretty incredible, guys. We've had like a 12% increase in homicides in the United States in 1 year.
Well,
1 year.
Cities like Austin, where we defunded our police. Sorry, Jason, I stepped on. In cities like Austin, where we gutted the Austin Police Department, a bunch of good, hardworking folks, murders up, I don't know what I read the other day, 90%. I've read 105%. But I can tell you, because I work downtown a lot, it's berserk. It's completely off the hook. Jason, you hit on something too. As far as solutions go, the core solution is leadership. We need leadership that will take care of this problem, because it can be. Talk to Title 10 for a little bit. I bet most folks don't know what that is. Title 10, the National and State Guard, using them to help shut this down.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I get very frustrated with the perception that you can't use the United States military at your southern border. That's absolutely incorrect. You're talking about trying to stop foreign invaders. And if you can't use the military to stop a foreign invasion, I don't know what you can. Now, definitely, we don't need to be bringing gunships down there to hold that line, but we definitely need to be bringing assets. And I want to give you some real simple examples of what we know that works. When you debrief the cartel, what they will tell you is that they cannot smuggle and they cannot move when there are air assets in the air. Helicopters, amongst all capabilities, whether you're talking drones, high-flying aircraft, mid-level or low-level, helicopters are by far the most effective because they will shut down a zone, and they cannot outrun a helicopter. The United States military can be sending hundreds of these birds down to help hold the line in each of these sectors, operating 24/7, 365. But we see none of that. And to me, it's extremely frustrating. Now, National Guard is doing some great work down there on the southern border with Texas. But then here's another leadership issue. You got what we call LPOPs, which are lookout posts and listening posts. We've got young soldiers down there literally holding M4s with no magazine in the gun because some moron at headquarters decided that was a little too offensive looking. So they've got their magazines on their chest, so that if something happens, they've now got to reach for it, load that mag up, rack that gun, and now get in the gunfight.
Wow.
I'm not done yet. It gets even worse, guys. They've got no body armor. They've got the plate carriers, but they won't let them have the plates, which we as taxpayers have paid for.
So, Jason,
you can't make this stuff up.
We don't want to offend a cartel guy.
Yeah. So, was this going on during Trump's administration? I know the flood. I know the mass flood of people. Was severely curtailed. Correct.
It did in 2020. Remember, we had massive failure under Trump as well, though, in 2019. That was just under 1 million people that were apprehended. But he figured it out, and what he implemented was absolutely brilliant. I came out on national television saying he's got to act now. I mean, I was very frustrated at the lack of action from leadership within DHS and others. And you saw him act. And what you saw was the Migration Protection Protocols Program and the over-the-horizon approach. Gentlemen, those two things are huge because it creates a layer of barriers you have to go through before you ever reach the border. Border security should never start at the border. That's the last failure. It should start all over the horizon, and they have to go through multiple layers before they hit us. So he figured it out, but I will tell you where he still had massive failures, and that is in the overdose data because they refused to take on the cartels. And you may remember in November of 2019 when Ovidio Guzman was arrested in Culiacan, and then the president of Mexico was forced to release him, again validating what I told you earlier about how the cartels are now at a parallel government level. You saw Trump come out and say, we're about to designate the cartels as terrorists. And our own government surged on that. FBI fearful that they were going to lose funding to fight Middle East terrorism. DEA fearful they were going to lose authority to be over Mexico the way they historically have been. As these agencies fail the American people at a miraculous level. And look, I say that not because I think it or I feel it. I have the data that validates everything I'm saying, why we should be doing what we're doing. I don't come on television like this to the American people without knowing that what I'm saying is absolutely factual based on the data. And the data shows our government is failing. It's not just a perception.
And the hell of it is,
it's frustrating.
Not Jason's data. Jason's using the government data. It's not his data. Nobody
they
can
know.
say, well, you made this data up.
Right.
He's actually using DOJ data. They're just not. And again,
failed data.
solvable.
Yeah.
Outdated
data at that. Yeah.
The organization, the machine they're using is pre-World War II. They won't designate these cartels as terrorist organizations, which they clearly are. Why not?
Yeah, so what do they got to do to get designated? It seems like they've earned their moniker, to me. But hey, Jason, when you interface with the talent bookers, for lack of a better word, on Fox and other programs, do they mitigate what you say? Do they not want to go there? Have you done a bunch of stuff that has informed at the level that you're informing here on Warriors and Wildmen, and it just hits the editing room floor? Or are they letting you pretty much freewheel and wake people up like you're doing right now?
No, they let me freewheel. The problem is timing. You got a 2-minute window. Guys, I can barely say my name and good morning and thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me.
You know what I mean? Right. And to really be able, and to really be able to
2
go
minutes,
through
you can barely, barely give enough information to let them know who you are and why they should listen to you in 2 minutes. I mean, sorry to keep interrupting. It's a little delay there.
Yeah, no. I was down on the border 2 weeks ago, and we captured a gun battle down there, and we had that on Tucker Carlson. I mean, guys, we're talking gun battles occurring at your southwest border that go on for hours. I mean, in December, I was down there with Lara Logan. She was the first national correspondent to show the level of gun battles occurring right on our border. I'm talking 50 caliber belt-fed machine guns, 40 millimeter grenade launchers going off. We saw tracer rounds shooting across the sky. You're talking armored vehicles, which are now in their 4th generation of cartel armored vehicles. I mean, we've got a war going on in certain parts of our border that are not being communicated to the American people. And I used to think, and I'll tell you, when I retired and I knew what was coming, I used to think that it was a left or a right issue, and I still do, obviously, to some degree. But what I'm finding out now is most journalists, there's not investigative journalists anymore. When I'm telling them these things, and that's the reason I show video with everything I do, because if I believe that if people can see it, you can illuminate it, therefore you can eliminate it. And no one believes what they hear anymore. And for good reason. We've all been lied to across the board. So that's why we go out, we get in on the border, we record it visually, we let the American people see it, and that's how we win, in my opinion. That's how we do it, guys.
So you got Biden, what was it, yesterday? It's like, we got to put that wall back up. We got to plug some gaps. Theater?
Well, I think time's going to tell on that, but I will tell you this. It's a major tripwire, because if he's saying that, that's because the intelligence community is communicating what I'm telling you here today about the number of special interest aliens coming through the Darien Gap, meaning that usually come around July and August, we begin to see a downturn in immigration. I'm going to tell you this time around, the perception that has been driven around the world is still occurring, and they're still coming. And that's what that really tells me.
And they're still being told, come one, come all.
And the number of people that get through in July and August in Arizona is going to go down. Maybe not the number of attempts, but once that heat cranks up, they ain't going to make it.
Yeah, and
you're
it
going to
was
have a lot of fat coyotes, fat buzzards. I mean that sounds facetious. It's not. You're going to have a lot of fat coyotes and vultures out there because the dead are going to be everywhere.
Hey guys, we gotta wrap it. Jim, 60 seconds, final thought, and then we'll toss to Jason.
This is 100% solvable. It's a leadership failure. It can be cured tomorrow. Everything Jason said is accurate. He's going by government statistics, and the solutions that he spoke to today would end this tomorrow if the current leadership would allow it. It's not a law enforcement failure. It's not a border security, operator failure. Our people are being held back. The good American law enforcement officers are being held back. And the victims are the immigrants. You hear this ridiculous term, undocumented immigrant. These are slaves. These are rape and labor slaves. The people who say, if you say you care about immigrants, the way I will, for example, being married to one, having 2 children, you better damn well get in a fight, because this is how you get immigrants killed and raped to death and beat to death and murdered with sledgehammers. Literally, we've seen that. Beat a man to death with a sledgehammer. It takes forever, especially when the guy's high and can't hit him right. If you care about immigrants, this would be a number one priority. And I don't know what state on that border isn't making this a priority. The states need to tell Washington to go to hell and close their borders. Yep. And we have the power to do that. I don't know why our state leadership isn't doing that. I want that question big and loud and clear. Where is Texas leadership? Because as Jason noted, this is solvable tomorrow. I don't understand it.
Yep.
Where are the guys right here where I'm sitting in Austin? Where are you? What's a greater priority? Why can't you get this done? Because you have the power to do it. Why are you not doing it? That's a big, hard to answer question.
Jason?
Yeah, one thing I want everyone to know is that what happens at your border directly affects you and your families, whether we're talking about the fentanyl overdose issue, the methamphetamine that's surging, or the violence. And I will tell you, you can't have 1.2 plus million people, which we're going to see in 2021 before it's over, surge into this country and not think that violence is not going to be affecting you and your families. But I also want you to know, with that being said, that this is absolutely fixable. And the things that I've laid out here today prove that it is. And I've built programs to go after the cartels. I know what works. And when we designate these cartels as terrorists, when we begin to look at our data to drive operations against 21st century crimes that are absolutely invisible to the government agencies, and then we get some leadership in there that are going to do everything they need to do, we're going to win. And the last thing I want to say is this, and I truly mean this: American people are going to have to get tough. And I mean damn tough. Because there are some of these cartel operatives that have killed hundreds and hundreds of people. We are dealing with an evil that many people can't even wrap their mind around. You think ISIS is bad? You can't even understand what. I don't have the time here right now to explain what we're up against. But I will tell you this: there are a lot of tough men out there. They just need the ability to operate and do what needs to be done. And it's going to happen, because eventually we're going to get it there. So thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, where can if people want to follow you, Jason, what's your website, and if they want to give to you, where could we direct that kind of finance?
To tripwirestriggers.com. That's tripwirestriggers.com. Also, I post what I call a daily situational report, or a sit rep, every day on TikTok, and you can go to Tripwires Triggers, and you'll get your daily updates of new data, new things coming out. I have a lot of cartel operatives who still give me data day in, day out, and I talk about the changes that are happening. So if you follow me there, you'll be able to see what's happening.
Awesome. Jim, you had another thought you were going to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to put an exclamation point behind something that Jason's saying. Jason is better at keeping it, from getting too emotional when he does these presentations, because he's just better at it. It makes me so damn mad it's hard to even do these sometimes, not because I don't want to, but because how many times we've been able to say this before. The average Texian, and that's not a typo. I mean the Texians, like the ones who stood the Alamo. When are we going to see them rise up? Jason's making a good point. Texans, men and women, need to harden the F up and get in this fight right now. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if we didn't have this fentanyl problem, you wouldn't have had George Floyd. He's a career criminal. He's obviously a drug addict. He might have killed himself some other way. But that's all on him. If you didn't have George Floyd, what would that undo? What chain of events would that unravel? Wait till the next one. Wait till the next 50. If Americans don't start making this a priority, it's going to be just what Plato once wrote. Those who refuse to participate in their government are soon governed by their inferiors. That's the problem. This is a leadership failure. Our leadership is leading in the wrong direction. Those are our elected servants. The governor of a state is the head maid. The president of the United States, when it is a real president of the United States, is the head maid of the whole country. Where's the service? Do your damn job, or get the hell out of the way and let somebody do it who wants to lead, like Jaeson Jones, for example. If Americans don't get in this fight's going to get in your household. You're going to lose somebody. You're going to lose a child. You're going to lose someone to a damn misnomer drug that your doctor prescribed, and they don't know what happened. It's like, whoa, how did fentanyl get in your system? Trust me, it's coming. China has declared asymmetric war on this country. That is their proxy military right there. And they are kicking the crap out of us, and they don't need to. We could stop this today. I don't know why we're not. What Jaeson Jones is doing, which is a great service to the American people, is he's letting folks know at inestimable risk to himself. All the time, this is all he does, 24 hours a day. You couldn't get a more respect-worthy lawman if you tried. Here's somebody who will stand up against the legions by himself and say, not on my watch. So he needs a bunch of warriors to get in. This is Warriors and Wildmen. Rain down hell on your elected officials. Get on the phone. Drive down to your local sheriff's department. Talk to your sheriff. Talk to your police chief. Go and talk to your governor in person. Say, hey, what's the holdup? Why are we a child rape factory? And tell me the legislative priority that's stopping you from addressing this right now. Put the boot heel of Texas law enforcement on the cartel's neck. Designate them as a terrorist organization and cut special operations loose and watch how fast that problem gets solved. And if nothing else, if you say you care about immigrants or you say you care about the good people of Mexico, why aren't we doing something?
Amen.
If Canada got invaded, would we not do anything? Would we sit on our asses? Because that's what's happening.
Good.
Yeah. Good stuff, guys. Jaeson Jones, thank you for being on Warriors and Wildmen. Jim, my brother, Houck, thank you for being on Warriors and Wildmen.
Thanks, guys. Nice to meet you guys.
Yep.
Nice to see you again, Jim.
Appreciate it. Big time. Yep. Thank you. Rich, what do we need to do, man? Aside from what Jim and Jaeson said we need to do, what else does the Warriors and Wildmen
need to listen to this podcast? They need to listen to this podcast twice is what they need to do and write down the numbers.
At least.
I think that's important. Right. And make a difference and get involved. Go to warriorsandwildmen.com, subscribe, like us, love us. It's free subscription. We'll hit you an email a couple times a week. Find us on social media while you still can. If you want to help us push this message out, hit the war chest. Tax deductible. Warriors and Wildmen out.